Hello! Hi, my vegan friends. I came across this article the other day. I read it and I went back to its history somewhat to understand it better, so you won't have to. I am going to give you a summary of the summary. A major disclaimer: I am not a legal expert and I am not providing legal advice or speaking in a legal capacity. I am not speaking on behalf of an organization either. This is all public records, and I am sharing with you my interpretation of it. I will provide you with all my resource links in case you want to corroborate the information yourself. As a fellow vegan, you know the war on animals has many fronts. So, as a vegan, I like to stay informed as much as possible on what is going on across all fronts in the fight for animal liberation. The legal domain is not my specialty. Nevertheless, I did my best to understand what is going on here. So, if you are a fellow vegan that has no time to read articles or do extra research, listen to this. Also, if you are a non-vegan and you are listening to this, I hope this perspective helps you go vegan. Let's go! In 1990, Kansas became the first state to have an Ag-Gag law. That Ag-Gag law is known as the Farm Animal and Field Crop and Research Facilities Protection Act. Ag-Gag law does exactly that. It gags what would be whistleblowers and undercover investigators exposing something and releasing that information to the public. The Farm Animal and Field Crop and Research Facilities Protection Act prohibits, with regard to any animal facility, foreign or interstate action to commit or attempt to commit specified acts, including 1. Stealing or releasing any animal, 2. Vandalizing or stealing property, 3. Breaking and entering to destroy, alter, duplicate, or obtain records, data, equipment, or animals, or 4. Receiving or concealing material, equipment, or animals with knowledge they have been stolen. You can see it in its full totality at congress.gov. In 2018, a coalition that consisted of the Animal Legal Defense Fund, Center for Food Safety, Public Justice, and Kansas Area Farmed Animal Organizations Shy 38 Incorporated and Hope Sanctuary, with the pro bono help of Foley and Mansfield law firm, filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of that Kansas Ag-Gag law, Farm Animal and Field Crop and Research Facilities Protection Act. That Ag-Gag law has been ruling Kansas since 1990. Okay, so 2 years later, in 2020, the U.S. District Court for the District of Kansas struck down nearly all of Kansas Ag-Gag laws for violating the First Amendment. The state is now barred from enforcing the Ag-Gag law. So this is a quote that I got from the article. The court's decision left intact only the portions of the law criminalizing causing physical damage to animals and facilities and the civil remedy for violations. While this is happening, federal courts have also struck down Ag-Gag laws in Idaho, Iowa, and Utah as unconstitutional. While this is an important victory for the animals and the public, the court failed to grant a permanent injunction against enforcing this law, the Ag-Gag law, which plaintiffs had sought. And the plaintiffs here is the coalition that was put by the Animal Legal Defense Fund. Okay, so the coalition filed a motion to amend the order issued in January 2020 to include a permanent injunction. was finally granted April 2020. The main issue was whether this law might be used against other parties in the future, despite having been found unconstitutional. Without a permanent injunction, the potential for the statute to be enforced, the coalition filed a motion to amend the order issued in January 2020 to include a permanent injunction. It was finally granted April 2020. Kansas, the state, opposed the motion for a permanent injunction, asserting that Kansas's statute was unconstitutional only as applied to plaintiffs, not in its face. The state argued that the injunctive relief was not necessary because it did not intend to violate the court's order and that it has never prosecuted or threatened to prosecute anyone under Kansas's Ag-Gag law. The judge, though, was very skeptical of this claim. So, Kansas appealed both the January and April decisions. And the parties are currently briefing the appeal in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit. However, April 2020, the permanent injunction was applied. August 2021, the United States Courts of Appeals for the 10th Circuit affirmed the law unconstitutional because it targeted speech, not merely conduct. A quote from the article states, "In today's decision, the Court of Appeals upheld the lower court's decision, finding the law unconstitutional and granting the plaintiffs a permanent injunction, thus barring the state from enforcing the Ag-Gag law." The court's decision held that 3 provisions of the Kansas Ag-Gag law at issue targeted speech, not merely conduct, because they regulate what may be permissibly said to gain access to animal agriculture facilities. The court held that Kansas may not legislate speech in order to silence views critical of animal agriculture. The court's decision affirms that videos, articles, advocacy, and public dialogue generated by whistleblowing and undercover investigations of factory farms and slaughterhouses relate to a matter of public concern. The treatment of animals on farms and manner in which food is produced, such speech lies at the core of the First Amendment. So that's what I find wild, right? That this Ag-Gag law that was enacted since 1990 has been deemed unconstitutional because it was trying to regulate individuals' speech and freedom of press, and that is protected by the First Amendment. So at this time, this was considered a victory for the animals. Okay, and at this point in time, 9 lawsuits were challenging the Ag-Gag law in Iowa, North Carolina, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming. The Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit and the 4th Circuit are conducting the review. Okay, so now we are in April 2022. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to review a decision by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit. This is a quote from the article now. The appeals court held that Kansas may not silence views critical of industrial animal agriculture. The court's decision affirmed that videos, articles, advocacy, and public dialogue generated by whistleblowing and undercover investigations of factory farms and slaughterhouses relate to a matter of public concern. The treatment of animals and workers on factory farms and slaughterhouses and manner in which food is produced. Such speech lies at the core of the First Amendment. This is why the U.S. Supreme Court left the ruling in place. Alright, so we are finally caught up to March 6th, 2024. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because this is how I came across all of this. And as a vegan, I would like to continue to learn more about what's happening in all fronts against animal exploitation, right? So now that we're caught up, we know what's happened since 1990 and then all the way to 2018 to now. So a hearing took place. House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee hearing. The Kansas House passed the House Bill 2816. Kansas Livestock Association proposed the bill to reach the objective to refine the state's protection against trespassers on farm property or people making fraudulent statements on employment applications to gain access to land and facilities, and block the use of drones and aircraft below 500 feet directly above agriculture businesses. Okay, so my opinion is the state is obviously fighting back and trying to tighten their grip on keeping what happens at these animal exploitation centers a secret. It's so evident that they are desperately, just literally trying to walk that thin line to get away with whatever they want. That's terrible. That should be a concern for you, whether you're vegan or not vegan. Right. So, officially, under House Bill 2816, Kansas would make it illegal to enter or remain in animal facility or field crop production areas without permission of the owner, or to knowingly make false statements on an employment application to gain access to those places. The same standards would apply to agriculture research areas controlled by private, university, federal, state, or local government entities. So, it's so obvious, right, that once the U.S. Supreme Court cracked down on their unconstitutional, unlawful laws and actions, these entities, these individuals are literally trying to do everything they can. They're trying to squeeze out everything they can to continue this type of industry. The Kansas Livestock Association approach was endorsed by the Kansas Farm Bureau, Kansas Grain and Feed Association, Kansas Agribusiness Retailers Association, Kansas Pork Association, and Kansas Dairy Association. My opinion, it just sounds like a mob to me.